to be on now.
Okay, welcome. My name is Diane Mokawal, and I'm the Molokai High School librarian. On behalf of NEA Big Read Hawaii, we welcome you to How Can We Tell a Story About the Secret Life of a Bird with author and artist Karen Lobel Freed. Karen has written 9 award-winning books to date about wildlife and the legends of Hawaii and beyond. She learned the art of book block printing from her mother. From her research in the field, in museum collections, and with scientists and cultural practitioner, Karen creates books and art that inspire people of all ages to care about wildlife. So let's give it over to Karen.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Joy. I'm so excited to be part of Big Read. And thank you all for coming along. And I just want to give a shout out to Molokai. Yay! Thanks so much for being part of this and being curious about how to tell a story about the secret life of a bird. I know that's kind of a mouthful of a title, but I thought about how really birds' lives are so secret to us. I mean, there's a lot of birds that we do see regularly, but I realized a lot of the birds that I'm curious about are birds that I don't really know about their lives, and I'll kind of hear about them. So what I thought I would do today is kind of like invite you and bring you along on my journey of discovery. When I'm curious about a bird or about any subject, the kind of work that goes into it, my behind the scenes. And ultimately what I do is I make books based on these curiosity journeys. So you might be familiar with some of my earlier books, like Legends of the Guardian Spirits, Legends of Dreams. And these are all books that have to do with the Hawaiian culture. And I did a couple of books with Nona Beamer, Naupaka, and Huapolu, the pretty blue Hawaiian flower. And then I got into legends that were that I found at Bishop Museum, like Lono, story about Lono. It's a really cool story that I discovered. We all know Lono as the agricultural god, but in this story, he starts out as a fisherman. And I was so curious to find out why he would be a fisherman in a legend. So check it out. And then Legend of the Gourd, which is a Big Island story. Well, through all of this time, birds were always tweeting in my ear and wanted me to pay attention to them. So one bird in particular, and I'm always thinking about this bird, and that's the albatross. I always was curious about these huge birds that have big wingspan, and they travel over thousands of miles of ocean. I had never seen an albatross, but I really wanted to. I wanted to get to know them. And I finally found an opportunity to do that. But before I tell you about that, I wanted to share with you a couple of videos that might make you curious about albatrosses too. So let's see. I'm hoping that this is going to work. Please let me know if it doesn't. Okay. Do you see the albatross on your screen? Okay, great.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so get ready. Here comes an albatross. I was filming just with my camera, and watch what this albatross did with me. He was curious about me. And with this guy, I had my camera and he grabbed onto the little cord and was trying to pull it out of my hands. I think he thought it was a squid.
I guess that's why it's really important we don't throw trash into the water, because they might think it's a squid.
Well, That is true. That's true. And actually, I'm going to be talking about that in this slide presentation. So the thing about albatross, who here has seen an albatross? Can you raise your hand? I don't know if you're able, I'll be able to see your either in the chat or if you want to show me your reaction. Has anybody seen an albatross before? If you can give me a reaction. No albatrosses? They're not that easy to see, and that's the thing. Only in the movies. Yeah, exactly. And that's what it was with me too. So I was really hoping to be able to see an albatross. So, and that's, how do you tell a story about an animal that you never get to see? And I really wanted to tell a story in a way that would help people to, even if they never get to see them, to imagine what they're like and to really feel like they know them. So I'm going to show you some of the pictures that tell that story. So I learned, when I do research for a book, I learn as much as I can about my subject. So are you seeing my slide right now?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a lovely ocean.
Excellent. Okay. So just trying to go to the next slide. Whoops. Okay. It just keeps going forward. Sorry. Okay. So we can, in the Northern Hemisphere, we can see 3 different kinds of albatrosses. And we can see them on the main Hawaiian Islands, on Kauai. If you happen to be in Princeville at a certain time of the year, then you'll probably get to see them because they nest on people's lawns. And there's even signs that tell you to go drive slow because there's an albatross crossing. Well, I had to go all the way to Midway Atoll, which is about 1,100 miles from Oahu. And it's a place where albatrosses nest. So I was part of this team. I volunteered with a team of 19 people the first time, and we counted all the albatrosses there, and there were a lot of them, 500,000, over 500,000 nests, which means there were more than 1 million albatrosses there. And here's a friend of mine, Kathleen, she's on Kauai, and she's demonstrating how big the wingspan is. I mean, this is a Laysan albatross, and that's how wide their wings are. And they use those wings to go really far. It's amazing. And they actually use less energy in flight than they do when they're on land. And the way they do that is with dynamic soaring and slope soaring. So if you see them, which I was really lucky to do, you actually can see them doing, it looks like they're going back and forth and up and down. And it's the most graceful thing, and they hardly move at all. It's all up to the wind. They depend on wind, and they've adapted to live and fly, soar for thousands of miles to get food and use hardly any energy at all. So when they eat and drink, these are all the things that I learned, that I noticed, that I knew that I wanted to share about in a book eventually. So when they eat and drink, they don't dive down to get their prey. They actually sit on the surface and they grab their squid. But the thing is, one of their main food sources is squid. And squid are mostly way, way, way deep down at the bottom of the ocean. So how can that be? Well, squid actually come up to the surface at night. So albatross do most of their feeding, most of their eating at night. So they land on the surface and they swim around. And when they're swimming, they actually disturb the bioluminescent critters. And then they can grab those squids that actually are all blue and lit up. And they can see them at night. They can also smell them. Oh, and they're also, they're tube-nosed birds. So these things that are on their bills, on their beaks, they're actually letting out all of the excess saline or salt, so they can drink salt water. They've adapted to drink salt water. They actually can't drink fresh water. So if they live so well over the ocean, why do they even bother going to land? I gave you a little hint here. I should erase that. Nothing like giving it away. Nests don't float. They have to go to land to nest. So they make beautiful little nests and they lay their eggs in the nest, but they also make nests in funny places. When I was on Midway, I noticed here's a nest that it's in a wrapped up hose, and here's one in the bicycle rack, and here's one in the middle of the road. Why would they do that? How about if I tell you? Albatrosses were on Midway way long time before humans arrived there. And whoops, they nest very close to where they nested the years before. So usually like within 5 feet, they'll make their nest the next year. So if there's a building there or there's a bicycle rack there, it doesn't matter to them. They're going to put their nest there. They kind of don't even tune into humans at all. So albatrosses nest in colonies. We also nest in colonies. I mean, when you think about it, humans all live together, right? We live in colonies, just like albatrosses do. So what are some of the reasons why? Well, we can meet other people when we live in colonies, right? That's what happens with albatrosses. That's how they meet a lot of other albatrosses and finally pick their life mate, is because they live in a place where there are lots of other albatrosses. They have protection in numbers, and youngsters can learn by watching others. And this is the coolest thing of all. Albatrosses love to dance, and they dance like crazy. When they come together, even the ones that are like married for a really long time, when they come back, they'll be living over the ocean for like months and months and months. And the mated pair are separate from each other. Like the female goes off here, the male goes off here. We don't think that they see each other the whole time, and they come back like within days of each other and they start dancing. Isn't that cool? I love that. The other thing that's amazing about albatrosses, I mean, when you think about it, Midway is like in the middle of nowhere. I mean, ocean doesn't have landmarks, right? It's just all looks the same to us anyway, but I don't think it looks the same to a lot of seabirds, because seabirds find their way to these little specks in the middle of the ocean. And how do they do that? No, the scientists aren't even completely sure, but from talking to different scientists, I've learned that they use scent, the sun, the stars, and the planets to help them find their way to their island. And they also use infrasound. And that's something that, I mean, I can't even imagine what that is, but it's a sound that's too low for us to hear, but it's there and they can hear it. And that helps them find the island where they have their nest. So once they arrive at the island, there's millions of other albatrosses. How do they find their mate? Well, apparently they use their sense of smell. They have a very good sense of smell. That's another thing that was surprising to me. I never knew that birds could smell, but apparently seabirds especially have a very good sense of smell. And also, just like us, when they get closer, they start to hear their mate, the voice of their mate. And you know how, like, if you go into a crowd, you might hear your friend's voice, and that's how you find your friend. It's just like that with albatrosses. They also talk to their eggs. They make a sweet little sound. If you're interested in seeing more videos about albatrosses on my YouTube site, I have lots of videos that show all the different things that albatrosses do. But both parents take care of their egg, and they don't help them with hatching. The bird has to get out all by him or herself. But then even after the bird has gotten out of the egg, the parent will still help keep the bird warm until he or she is old enough to maintain her own body temperature. And then the parents both go out and get food, and they come back and they feed the young albatross. Then they spend a lot of time flapping their wings and getting strong for flight. And through that time, they have very silly looking haircuts. They're losing their downy feathers and they're getting their adult feathers. And they look very different. And finally, it's time to fledge. Their wings are strong enough and they take to the air, and they go off for about 4 or 5 years just over the open ocean until they're ready to come back to land and meet their life mate. There's a lot of challenges I learned to living life as an albatross. And Joy, you mentioned this earlier, plastic is a big problem because all the plastic that is floating on the ocean surface, flying fish lay their eggs and they have to attach it to something so it'll float. And it used to be things like wood that would be floating on the surface of the ocean, but now there's a lot of plastic. So a lot of times albatrosses will eat the flying fish eggs that are attached to the plastic. And then they feed the plastic to their chicks. So the seabirds really need our help. Also rising the global rising sea levels because of the rising temperature of the ocean is really bad for the nests get pulled away with storms. So ways that we can help albatrosses is using less energy, like walking or taking bicycles or taking public transportation when we can, and don't use single-use plastics. And also buy safely caught seafood, because that's another problem. Albatrosses go after the long lines that the fisheries use. The other thing that we can do is we can learn and we can share. And that's what I like to do. And that's where my book came from, Perfect Day for an Albatross. So I took a lot of the things that I learned about albatrosses and I incorporated them into my story. So using words and pictures, I told the story about an albatross named Malie, which means calm. So here's one of the pages from the book. And I thought I would read you just one page, just so you could get a sense of how I tried to tell the story of this one albatross and how she felt at a certain moment. So when it was time for her to get off the nest, she's been sitting on the nest for 2 weeks. And finally her mate comes back and he relieves her and he takes over the nest. And at first she's reluctant to leave, but finally she all of a sudden says, "The feeling is so strong to go, I don't even look back. I face into the wind and suddenly I am in forward motion, running, wings outstretched, tap, tap, tapping my feet on the flattened sand. Faster and faster I run, the wind, the lift, and then I'm in the air." And then she flies off to sea. So you can use words and pictures to tell a story. So that way, the life of the bird is not so hidden anymore, right? If you read a book about something, then it reveals all kinds of story, the story of this bird. Now I'm big. I guess I should have done that before when I was reading the book. Sorry about that. Next time I'll get rid of that screen share. Okay. So showing the personality of a bird in a book, that's kind of my thing right now. I did it with Albatross and then with Manu, that storybook about a boy who's named after an extinct forest bird. Now I know that there's one person here that has a copy of that book, Manu, the Boy Who Loved Birds. Can you raise your hand? Do you have that book? There you are. That's right. Me too. I have it too. It was fun. It was fun to write this book and it was challenging to write it because just imagine what it's like. I mean, with the albatross, I got to go and spend time with them and see what they were like. With the book in this story, the oh bird, oh, yay! The oh bird is extinct, so I could never see them, right? And the other part that was challenging is extinction is sad. It's really sad. So how do you tell a story about a really sad subject without being really depressing and down? I mean, my idea is to be hopeful and to be encouraging and inspiring and hoping that people will want to conserve the birds that we have left. So that was what my motivation was behind this book. And when I wrote it, I tried to take a very challenging, sad subject and make it uplifting. So I'm going to share with you now the story behind the making of Manu, the Boy Who Loved Birds. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to Okay, now do you see the whole slide? The one slide? All right, thank you. Okay, so working with University of Hawaii Press on this book was amazing. For many reasons. They were wonderful to work with, and they did the story also in a Hawaiian language version, which was really, really thrilling. By the way, I just want to remind people or tell people, please, if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask, or if you have something that you want to share, you can also put it in the chat. I don't mean to just throw all this stuff at you. I would really love to hear what you are thinking and if you have any questions. And we'll have time, a little bit of time at the end also to talk. But please, this is what I'm here for. So I encourage you to share or to ask questions as well. Okay. So this book, okay, here we go. So like I was saying, the o'o bird is extinct. So I had to go to the Bishop Museum and look at some of the birds that are already dead, and they mounted them, right? But what I did was, I mean, how sad is this? Drawers full of birds, skins, they call them. So they're just lying there like that. But some of them they mounted, and the mounted ones, I took pictures of them at all different angles so that when I did the drawings for my book, I could make them look like they're alive. So here is a drawing that I did while I was at the museum of one of the mounted birds. What we don't have any photographs because a lot of the o'o species, there were 4 different species of o'o. A lot of them went extinct before photography was even invented. So some artists from Victorian times did illustrations of the birds. And a lot of the artists didn't even see the birds themselves. They did the illustrations from the birds' skins like I do. This book was actually written based on a real story, and this is a real boy. And it was named after the o'o bird. So as the story goes, and some of you might be familiar with it, Manu is a city boy, but he's named after this o'o bird that he knows is extinct, and he's wanting to know, why was I named after an extinct forest bird? And his name actually means Manu o'o mauloa, may the o'o bird live on. And he just doesn't understand, how can a bird that's extinct live on? That doesn't make any sense. So he decides he's going to learn everything he can about the o'o bird. He learns that they have tongues that are shaped like straws with little brushes at the end. And this is true. So I was able to work this into the story, this little fact about the birds. And see, here he is with his dad researching on the computer. I love research. I'm a total nerd. And so is Manu. And Manu, the way that I was able to share more information about the o'o bird is through Manu's dreams. So I have him dreaming, and he dreams that he's flying. I read about the o'o bird and how they fly, like their kind of flight, like they were very fast and they would zip through the forest and go low on the mossy floor and then go higher up. And in the canopy of the trees, they would drink the nectar from their favorite lehua blossoms. So I was able to tell that part of the story through dreams. Manu also goes with his class to the Bishop Museum, and he sees all of the beautiful feather work, but he's a little bit confused because he's thinking, this famous skirt, this pa'u, was made for the Princess of Maui, and it's made with 1,000,000 o'o feathers. And he's thinking, where did all the o'o birds go? That they had so many birds to make the feathers, and now they're all extinct. Then he has a dream, and in the dream, we learn about how the way they catch the birds and remove the feathers, and they don't kill the birds, they just remove the feathers and then release them. But in the Bishop Museum, they have the feathers that are all together that are used to make the capes. Manu is very upset because he has never seen an endemic Hawaiian bird. And for his birthday, his family they take him to the Big Island, which is where I live in Volcano. And they get to go to the Volcanoes National Park. And then he learns, he goes to the visitor center, which is open again, yay. And he learns what the birds sound like. And then when he goes into the forest with his parents, he hears them first, and then he knows where to look for them. He uses his dad's binoculars and he looks up and he sees this first apapane, and he's all excited. And the way he finds the apapane, like I said, he hears them because they make a really cool fluttering sound with their wings. It's like, when they fly from branch to branch, you can hear them. And what you're hearing is not the sound of their voices, but you're hearing the sound of their wings in the air. And then Manu's family brings him to the Keaho Conservation Center. And Manu gets to see different birds that are in trouble in the wild, like the palila and the alala. And the alala are not even in the wild anymore. They are actually being bred in captivity, which means that they're going to be released someday and hopefully do well out in the wild again. And Manu's family also brings him up to do outplanting. Has anybody ever done outplanting? That means you take a little keiki plant and you put it in the ground. And then years later, not even that many years, you start to see a forest grow again. It's an incredible thing to do, a lot of fun. So Manu gets to do this. And these trees are so important. He's helping to create the habitat that the birds are missing and that the birds need. So Manu is making a difference for the future of the birds. So he feels that. In the back of the book, there's all kinds of information about the o'o bird and cultural information. And then there's a page about how we can help.
I saw a raised hand from the little boy. Did he have a question? Do you have a question? I've forgotten what your name was. No, it's okay. I thought I saw his hand.
Tell him your name again.
Ezra.
Ezra. That's a great name. Ezra.
In the Manu, the one in Hawaiian, why was it smaller than the one in English?
Oh, that was just the way I showed it on the page. They're actually exactly the same size. That's a very good thing that you noticed. I just kind of put it on my slide like that. Thanks for pointing that out and asking in case anybody else was curious.
Oh, and I also saw an albatross at Kayana Point.
Oh, you did. What did you think?
It was big.
It's big. Yes. Was it sitting on an egg?
It was flying.
Sitting and flying.
It was sitting and flying.
Wow, you're lucky. We're lucky, right? It's very cool to see it, to get to see an albatross. Good for you. So I wanted
Quick question. Oh, sorry.
Excellent question.
I have a quick question about
Oh, yeah.
albatross. So they mate for life, but they don't fly away together when they go looking for food?
Well, I mentioned that to somebody. I always thought that they went off, and somebody, a biologist said to me, we don't really know. We don't know what they do out there. So maybe they do meet up somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it isn't really known it's secret, I guess. They go off, they fly over thousands of miles. And actually now they're starting to do radio tagging where they attach to their feathers something that they can follow them around on the computer and see where they're going. And we're discovering new things about them all the time. But that's had been the understanding, that they go off separate and then they come back together again. So it's sort of interesting. So back to Manu. This is one thing that I was thinking about. When we tell a story about a bird, one thing to think about is, well, how do we communicate their personality? Well, what kind of personality does the oh bird have? So yeah, it was challenging for me to learn that because I never got to see them. And there isn't that much written. There's a little bit written about them through Perkins. He was a naturalist that would go out and collect birds for different museums. And he wrote a journal, and he talked about all the different birds and how he couldn't find them, or if he did find them, what they were like. So I was able to look at that, which was really helpful. But and then you think about it. So a bird's personality will be told in its posture, like the way it holds itself. So I was really lucky to get to talk to a biologist named Thane Pratt, and he spent time with probably the very last oh bird on Kauai, the last oh bird of any of the oh birds that existed. And he helped me with one thing that I thought would be cool. I wanted to share with you guys. So my books start as just drawings. Well, these are the black and white block prints, not the drawings. So in this drawing, well, it's not a drawing, it's a block print. In this block print, it's before I added the color. Originally, I didn't have the tail up like that, the tail feathers up. And when Thane looked at all of my illustrations and he said, it's not right, you have to have the tail feathers up, because that's what they would do. They would crouch down and they would show up their tail feathers up like that. And when you think about that, if the tail feathers are down and the bird is sitting kind of calmly upright, doesn't the bird look kind of like feisty, like crouching down in that picture? And that was what Thane said. They were pretty feisty birds. So I needed to show that more. So I wanted to show you how it looks on the block print, how I actually create the art for my books. So I'm going to pull my screen down. And as you can see, I have one of the blocks from my book. That was the block that you just saw. Trying to make, okay, that way you see it upright. So this is my ink. And I put it out on my cardboard. And I use my Baden to roll out the ink. And then I carefully roll it onto my block. And you want to make sure that it only goes on the surface and not into any of the cracks, any of the carved places. And then I take my paper and I lay it down on my block. And I transfer the ink onto the paper. Well, that was my brayer. This is my Baden. Sorry. And a lot of times I'll use a spoon to get all the little details. And then I carefully lift my paper. And there is my block print. So what do you notice about the two of these? Can you see? Do you see how they're mirrored image of each other? Oops, sorry about that. here's what it looks like in the book in full color. So it's a whole process. And what I was trying to show before was the drawings. So the drawings start out like that. A lot of times I just use a ballpoint pen and pencil. So as I did with the Albatross book, with this book, with Manu, I also told the story about the bird's personality in the way I described the bird. So I wanted to share with you the way Manu and the bird fly in the dream together, because that really describes the bird's personality. They banked around lush fern trees, spiraling playfully over the mossy forest floor. Manu felt like he was the pilot and the plane, doing crazy tricks. They zipped through the street, the sweet, damp air taking turns chasing each other. Olapa trees, like hula dancers, waved their leaves gracefully as Manu and the o'o bird flew by. Manu quickly plucked and swallowed an olapa berry, then caught up to his friend to help chase smaller birds away from the lehua blossoms. They slurped up the sweet nectar. Manu thought it tasted like liquid candy. So now I wanted to share with you, does anybody have any questions? How long does it take to carve out one block? That's a great question. So it depends on the size of the block. Some blocks, a block I'm working on right now for Hanauma Bay has 26 fish species in it, and it's taking me a very long time. It depends on the block, but you know, as you can imagine, it does take a long time. I actually brought a little demo that I wanted to show you at the end, share with you, to show you how, like, do a little drawing and then carve a little bit of the block so you can see what it takes to carve the block. Yeah, whoa, exactly. My mom taught me, by the way. She's a block print artist as well. Okay. Yes, I had a biologist confirm the bird behavior. I work with biologists all the time, and I'm really lucky. I mean, living in Hawaii, it's amazing how people are so willing to help and really want to help. And I want to talk to biologists and cultural specialists, cultural practitioners, so I can learn, because I want to get it right. That's the whole point of it. So, yeah. Okay, here's a question. Does the albatross fly high, and does it get a lot of food? Okay, so the albatrosses, it's wild to see, because they can fly really high, but then they fly really low. They have this kind of flight and soaring that is like, they zip up into the air, and then they go sideways, and then they just zip down, and then they go up, and then they go down. And it's this whole up and down, side to side thing. And they use that, like using the wind and using that motion with their arms out straight, their arms, their wings out straight, and their flight, the primary feathers are really like fingers at the very end, and they do these subtle things with their feathers, and then it turns them, and oh my goodness, it's the coolest thing to see. I hope you all get a chance to see that. So this is from a question is from a kindergartner. That's a great question. Does it get a lot of food? Well, we certainly, I hope so. You wouldn't believe how far they have to fly to get food. It's amazing, but they go so far and they hardly use any energy. but they know where to go. Apparently they go to the same fishing places. So it's pretty cool. I'm working on a new book right now, and it's about this guy right behind me. It's a Hawaiian petrel, and there's only two endemic seabirds in Hawaii, and the Hawaiian petrel is one of them. And I'm working on a storybook, and this time it's about a girl. Yay! Boys are great, but so are girls. So this girl, her mom is a biologist, and this girl is really lucky because she gets to learn all about Hawaiian petrels by hanging out with her mom. And what I did, it's kind of like the little girl's experience. Her story is my story because I did all this research, and I wanted to share with you because I put together a slideshow that I show all the different places that I got to go to see these Hawaiian petrels. So I'm going to share that with you now. And please feel free to keep on chatting with me and putting in your thoughts or your questions. So this new storybook, are you seeing the slide? Yay! Okay, thanks, Joy. So the next storybook that I'm working on right now is called Finding Home, A Petrel's Journey. And this is what it's like for me to research for a new book project. So I spent time, what I did was I went to all the different islands where the Hawaiian petrels occur. And my first stop was on Kauai. So Pacific Rim Conservation is working on a program where they are translocating Hawaiian petrels. And what that means is they move them from their mountain, their mountain homes, their mountain burrows. The burrow is where they actually have the parents lay the eggs. So they move the egg from the burrow, or the baby chick from the burrow, and bring it to a place that's safe. Because unfortunately, they are not safe in these burrows where they're growing, because a lot of cats go and kill them. They pull them out of the burrows and they kill them. So cats are a real problem, a real danger for native birds. So what's happening is the Oahu, the Hawaiian petrels, are going to go extinct if we don't help. So this is one thing that Pacific Rim Conservation has done. They built a giant predator-proof fence on Kauai, and they're bringing the birds there, and they're raising them there. And then the birds fledge, and then 5 years later, just like the albatross, they come back, and they've actually been coming back. So it's pretty exciting 5 years later. So anyway, I got to see the helicopter come in from the mountains and bring the baby Hawaiian petrel, the uwa'u, and they would weigh him and then put him into his little man-made burrow or woman-made burrow. So then I went to Lanai, and I got to go into the colony at night, and I got to hear them because they're nocturnal. They really are most active at night. But this is a camera that was inside of the burrow, and I used that photograph, and I did a drawing of the uwa'u, of the little chick. And they use a lot of these ferns, the uluhe ferns, and use it as nesting material. On the Lanai, there was one chick that was left with only one parent because the other parent was captured by a cat. So they ended up needing only one parent is not enough to feed a growing chick. Can you believe that? It takes two parents to feed one chick. Both parents have to go out and fly really, really far away and come back with the fish oil to feed this growing chick. And it's incredible to me to think that it takes two adults all that energy, all that effort to just raise one little chick, but that's what they do. So what happened was my friend, Rachel Sprague on the Lanai, she and her team would go out every few days. And when the one remaining parent was gone, they would go and they would give the chick supplemental feedings. So she sent me some of the photographs from their camera that was set up outside and showing how the chick would go and exercise his wings at night And then finally the chick fledged. So they helped to raise this little chick. So this is Rachel holding the chick, and I did a drawing of it, and this is going to be in the story. They're going to have the same story where this girl's mother helps to give supplemental feedings to the chick, and then the chick does survive. Then I got to go camping up on Mauna Loa, where there are lots of ua'u burrows. And we actually discovered a new burrow while I was there. So I got to put my name, you can't really see it, but on the tag, I was like, so exciting. So you wouldn't even know that it was a burrow because there's so many natural holes. But that's the thing that's cool about ua'u, is they really do make nests in a lot of different kinds of places. And then I was really lucky. One of the things that I get to do as a volunteer is I get to review all of the these they call them game cameras. So it's a camera that's been showing that takes a picture every time there's motion. So I get to see all of the different activities of this bird outside of a burrow at night. And I really felt like I was like really seeing as a secret life that I wasn't even, the bird didn't even know that I was seeing it. So here the bird came out and was just chilling out. And then they would collect some dirt with his beak. He would like chew at the dirt and then bring it into the burrow. And then he would gather more dirt. And then, I don't know if you can see it, but he's pooping here. Check it out, Ezra. Can you see this? Can you see my pointer? He's pooping. Birds poop too. Is that gross? No. It's natural. So on the Big Island also, up at Hawaii Wildlife Center, they told me about an ua'u that had come down that couldn't fly because he had a broken wing. So they fixed the wing. Here's the wing fracture. You can kind of see it, but they, they banded it up and the bird actually healed beautifully. But then when she was in the pool, exercise pool, getting her strength back again, she broke her feathers. So she couldn't fledge. You can't fly without feathers. So they were actually able to repair the feathers. Can you see that? I'm pointing at them. Isn't that cool? And then the bird fledged. So I love the idea of humans helping birds. So I wanted to tell that story. That's going to be in the book. Then I went to Maui and I was hanging out with the wonderful people at Maui Nui Seabird Recovery Project. And this is me, and I'm up on Haleakala. It was wild up there, really wild. But here's what, sometimes they'll put out decoys to try to attract the birds. Since the birds live in colonies, when they see other birds like themselves, they'll be interested and they'll go down. And sometimes they even put up a speaker that sends out the song of this bird, and that attracts the birds as well. We found an old ua'u burrow, and there was an egg there, and that was pretty cool. I'm also going to be including what they look like when they're in flight. And I want to gently share with people how cats are such a threat to seabirds and to all birds. But this little girl, she has a cat. She loves cats. I love cats. But she talks about how they keep their cat indoors. And her cat's name is Io. And Io is a hawk, a hunter. One of the other big threats to the ua'u, the Hawaiian petrel, are the lights at night, because they are, seabirds are naturally attracted to lights. So a lot of times they'll go flying and flying around and just plop onto the ground, and then they're easy catch for a predator. So if you ever see a downed seabird, you can bring it to either an animal hospital, or if you're on Kauai or Maui, there's aid stations, and you can actually put it inside one of these little boxes, and they come and collect them every morning. And that's pretty cool. So turn off your outside lights during the season when the seabirds are fledging. Did you have a question, Ezra? I think Ezra has a question. I'm almost done with this slide. So this is me holding a bone-in petrel, which is another one. And this is new art for the next book, Finding Home.
Sorry to interrupt you there. The little
Okay.
boy had to leave, and I just want to let you know we have about 8 minutes left.
Okay, great. Thank you for the heads up. I see somebody wrote, why is it gathering dirt? That's a great question. So the uwa'u, they gather dirt and they bring it into their nest, because that makes like a soft place to lay the egg. And I see them doing that a lot. And you wouldn't believe, I mean, when I was on Midway, there were a lot of bone-in petrels. And interestingly, bone-in petrels were almost wiped out there. And they got rid of the rats. And then the bone-in petrels have made a huge comeback, huge. They're doing really, really well. And they're doing what the Hawaiian petrels used to do on our islands, where at night, when they would come in during their nesting season, they would darken the skies. There's actually Hawaiian stories about birds coming in and darkening the skies because there's so many of them that they don't let the light through. And I actually got to see that on Midway, where there are so many bone-in petrels coming in the evening. It's really cool. So they would gather dirt. They use their bills, and they actually use their bills on the bone-in petrels, excavate new burrows by using their bills, and they scrape, and they can dig pretty long burrows, pretty long holes to the burrows. It's pretty cool. So I'm really excited to be working on this new story. So we have like 6 minutes left. Does anybody else have questions, or do you want to see me carve a block? I could show you how I do that. Raise of hands. Anybody interested in that? Okay. Well, you might be surprised, but I did choose as my subject a nesting bird. I know, it's a big surprise.
Kara, while you're starting on your carving, here's a question from another young child. How do the albatross feel when there's a squid underneath to catch it?
How do they feel when there's a squid underneath? Well, it's kind of interesting. So I think what you mean is, how do they know there's a squid underneath to catch? Is that what you mean? Oh, how can they feel that there's a squid? I think that they smell them. I think they know that they're nearby because they smell them, but also these squids, many of them are bioluminescent. Do you know what that means? It's a big word. What it means is at night, these animals can give off their own light. So they actually glow in the dark, this beautiful blue and white and purplish colors. Actually, I show it a little bit in this art. All of these creatures, see, that's a bioluminescent creature. So they look really different in the ground, in the ocean, because they actually give off their own light. So I think that the albatrosses can see them. Isn't that cool? Can you imagine? So yeah, they paddle around. You're welcome. Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Okay, if any other questions come up, and I'm going to show you how I transfer a little drawing to a block and then carve it. But feel free to ask more questions and Joy will tell me. So this, I take a soft pencil. This is a number 6 pencil. And I go over my very simple drawing. I'm not going to do the whole thing because we don't have too much time left. Okay, and then I take it off and I put it on my block. And then I transfer it onto the block. See how it's starting to get transferred? So here, remember I was saying before how they're kind of like mirrored images of each other? So once I carve this out, then when I go to print it, right? And the way I carve is I use, believe it or not, this big box cutting tool to carve. And I'm going to carve the beak first so you can really see. And notice how my hand is always in the same position. The thing that I move is the block itself. That way I don't cut myself. But I can also use some of my other tools. These have different shapes. They're called gouges, and I can get a lot more detail with them. And the way I can see how I'm doing, how it's looking, is before I actually go ahead and print it. I'm gonna grab they call it a China marker. It's a special kind of pencil that blackens it, and you can really see what you've carved out. How are we doing for time, Joy?
Sorry, we have 1 minute left.
1 minute, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to put this aside, but you see, that gives you a little bit of an idea. Well, I want to thank you all for coming very much. It's been fun sharing with you. I hope that you learned things, and feel free to reach out anytime. I have a website and my email's on my website. And whenever I write books and write stories, I love knowing if people enjoy them. So give me a shout out anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everyone attending, for Karen, and also for everybody attending this NEA Big Read Hawaii session. Check out the Big Read website for registration details for other events. Karen is going to be back on Thursday for an interactive book show behind the scenes and between the pages from 9:30 to 10:30. So sign up for that. So thank you again, Karen. This was so fun and informative.
Great, thank you.